Why? Why? Why are they doing this to us? Oh, God. Oh my God, why? All right, guys, we just got the news. Tony Ferguson has signed himself up to be decapitated or choked by Paddy Pimblett, and I am devastated by this news. As well, on the same day that we get this news, it's also confirmed that what Wonderboy was tweeting about yesterday wasn't just random, wasn't just rumors, wasn't just make-believe stuff. Wonderboy is also going to be fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov as well. I mean, the MMA gods, they giveth, but they also taketh away. You can't have a world, you can't live in a world where Sean Strickland is going to be a UFC champion and Colby Covington actually gets signed up to fight in another championship match. You can't live in that world and live in a world where Tony Ferguson doesn't get sacrificed to a new up-and-comer and Wonderboy doesn't get destroyed by an undefeated Mongolian destroyer. Oh God. I mean, I'm filming this video so that we as fans can experience this together, so you guys can tell me your reaction to this fight news. I don't really think you need me to elaborate on my reaction to this news too much. Tony Ferguson has given us just an amazing 6-fight streak of ways to get defeated. His armbar against Charles Oliveira was amazing to watch, how his arm didn't snap. His knockout against Michael Chandler was amazing to watch. Who knew a face could morph that way? And to watch the way that his body went rigid and started to shake against Green, it just goes to show that no matter whether he's winning or he's losing, Tony Ferguson is going to be a highlight machine. And in all honesty, I think it's going to happen again. Look, Paddy Pimblett looked bad in his last fight, but you try and look good in a fight where you've got one leg. He broke his foot in the first round, guys. There is something that needs to be remembered when we're talking about that fight and when we're watching that fight. He broke his foot in the first round, right? And he still made it look competitive against Jared Gordon. And, you know, Jared Gordon definitely deserved that win, but he made it look competitive enough to where the judges gave it to Paddy Pimblett. And that either says two things. Jared Gordon is as bad as Ian Gary and can't beat a man on one leg, or Paddy Pimblett is better than, you know, what the general consensus is giving him credit for. And he's certainly good enough to beat Tony Ferguson. Listen, I love Tony Ferguson. I want Tony Ferguson to do well, but he is just showing us a level of decay that is thus far unprecedented in MMA. Well, maybe Sam Alvey's decay. And maybe Parker Porter. Listen, and maybe Tai Tuivasa. The point is, Tony Ferguson, he's now up there with the greats in levels of how bad can it get for your fans. And it's going to get pretty bloody bad. Listen, this December card is shaping up to be amazing. Like, we're already talking about Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards, and we haven't even had a chance to talk about Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards. This is the first that we're bringing it up. Like, this card, we all knew December was going to be great because people wanted to fight in December. The fighters want Christmas off, but this December card is going to be perfect, beautiful, a beautiful way to see out what has been one of the wildest, most unpredictable years in MMA. Robert Whittaker lost. So how do I see the fight going? What do I think is going to happen? I think that all the fans are going to be backing Tony Ferguson. All of the fans, even the English fans. Paddy Pimblett lost so much fan stock in his last fight. You know, the way that he acted going into the fight, just losing the argument with Ariel Helwani, the way that he acted after the fight when he clearly should have lost on the judges' scorecards, but they gave him the win. He lost that in the fans' eyes. The fans are going to be rooting against him hard. So it's a good move for Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is going to have all the fan momentum, all the old school heads, all the new school heads. We're all rallying behind Tony. And I'm already seeing it online. People talking about it. Tony has a bit of a chance. People think Tony has a chance here. I'd love to think that Tony Ferguson has a chance here. This is one of those fights where my heart says Tony can do it, because the annoying thing, the really painful, hurtful thing about being a Tony Ferguson fan is that there's always a chance. he always lands one of those strikes that seems to stagger his opponent, and you see old Tony there. But then he'll slowly spin around and face his back towards the opponent and just not even be in the fight properly. He'll be throwing shots from range now that just aren't landing. He'll be happy to be in guard on the bottom, and this is where I really see where Paddy Pimblett can be making a lot of good moves, because I think Paddy Pimblett will get clipped by Tony. I think the fight will get messy and go to the ground. I think Paddy's younger, stronger chin with the year off is going to be able to handle whatever old man Tony can give him on the feet, and Tony is going to be happy to be playing jiu-jitsu with Paddy Pimblett, and I think Paddy Pimblett is probably going to finish Tony on the ground, whether it's a sub or a TKO, but I think that's the way this is going to go down. Tony Ferguson, I know right now, I can hear you in the comments right now, you're saying Tony Ferguson is like an amazing jiu-jitsu artist, and he is, but he also just got subbed by Bobby Green, guys, who is a boxer. And then are we going to see a Tony Ferguson retirement? It all makes sense to say that we will. We all want to see a Tony Ferguson retirement. We wanted to see it in his last fight. But the problem is Tony Ferguson is mad. He is mad. And even if he wins or loses, we are not going to see a Tony Ferguson retirement. I believe the only way that we're going to see Tony Ferguson leave the UFC is when the UFC asks him to leave, when they stop re-signing him. And I thought we saw rumors about that this week. There is a Twitter page called UFC Roster, and they said that Tony Ferguson had been dropped by the UFC this week, but I didn't see that news get covered anywhere else. So I didn't want to speak on it. I didn't think it was real. And apparently it isn't. Here we are. Tony Ferguson signed up for another execution. It sucks. But I do think the UFC are going to have to just sit down with Tony Ferguson's contract and say, we're not re-signing you. And this is maybe a conversation that we'll get into a little bit deeper, after this happens and we see what happens with Tony Ferguson after this fight. But I do believe the UFC should probably pull a GSP here and continue to sign Tony Ferguson, but give him dog shit fights that he's not going to want to fight. Because if Tony Ferguson leaves the UFC and he becomes a free agent, he's just going to hurt himself in bare knuckle or in boxing or in Bellator. He's just going to sustain more damage. And I love Tony Ferguson so much. I don't want to see him fight at all. Anyone. Even in grappling. Don't even go to one championship and do just a grappling match. Just teach classes, teach seminars. Stay out of the physical combat of the sport, Tony. For God's sake, you are going to be the earliest person to ever get CTE ever. Right, rant over. Let's get to the second bit of disappointing news. Wonderboy versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. This is Usman's fault. This is Usman's fault. Usman should be fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov. How dare he? I have been so happy with Wonderboy, the way that he's been speaking to the media and the way that he's been handling his career. He knows he's in the twilight of his career. He knows where he is in the rankings. He knows that if he just stays on a winning streak with smart fights, something might happen where he gets called in for a title shot. He was close to being called in for a title shot already. And then this happens. Shavkat, undefeated Rakhmonov. It's a killer of it. It's a killer of a decision to make, Wonderboy. It's a killer. I do not think Wonderboy can win this fight. Listen, we are all high on Wonderboy right now. We are all calling Wonderboy the greatest striker in the UFC. I've said it myself. Going back and watching Kevin Holland's tape, because Kevin Holland just fought, I forgot something, and I think we're all forgetting it. Kevin Holland knocked Wonderboy down twice in that fight, and then Kevin Holland broke his hand. Before Kevin Holland broke his hand, Kevin Holland was standing toe-to-toe with Wonderboy. So are we saying that Wonderboy is the greatest striker in the world ever, and he's just amazing, and Kevin Holland can stand with him after what JDM just did to Kevin Holland, after the way Kevin Holland tends to fight? Or is Wonderboy what we thought Wonderboy was? He's a really good karate specialist, but in MMA, he can get picked apart. And of course, there's the wrestling and Shavkat's grappling and Shavkat's knees up the middle. I think Shavkat is the fighter who has the fight in him. He is going to push a pace that is going to just gas Wonderboy and grind on Wonderboy and grappling, like all the things that Wonderboy hates. Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to implement in this fight, and I can understand why Wonderboy is going to take this risk. If Wonderboy gets the win over Shavkat Rakhmonov, he is in such a good position, to challenge for the title. I think he has got more of the fans behind him than Bilal Muhammad has. But he's like, what are the odds going to be? What are the odds going to be? Guys, let me know down in the comments. Do you think either of our boys have a chance? And think with your heads, not with your hearts, because My heart is always saying Tony has a chance, Wonderboy has a chance. If you do believe with your head that Tony or Wonderboy have a chance in these fights, let me know down in the comments. Not just they're gonna win, bruh. How are they gonna win? What are they gonna do that's gonna get them the win? Guys, if you've been enjoying these videos, I've been enjoying making them. Maybe consider clicking that subscribe button down there, and I will see you all in the next one. This is going to be a hell of a card. Get the tissues ready.